So we are back for another episode of the Ike MMA podcast, and I'm joined with my new co-host Emmanuel from the Prospects MMA podcast. Yeah, he runs his own show, and it's taking off really, really well.
Thank you.
And we have to. Well, I was about to say that we have to try and make this a regular thing, or at least yourself. Yeah, at least you have to try and force it, because my timekeeping is always lousy. It's not the best as what it could be. Yes, and at this age, really, it shouldn't even it shouldn't even be an issue.
How old are you anyway?
I'm the same age as you, 33.
Okay.
Do I look younger?
Not for long. I'll be 34 at the end of this month. Yeah. Do you look younger? I don't know. It's kind of hard to tell. Never met you in person, so yeah, it's one of them things. Kind of hard to tell.
But
yeah. Like I said before, like if we do it once a week at least the viewers have something to look forward every single week from the both of us in regards to what's happening, whether it's UK, Ireland, global stage, UFCs, Bellators, and all that. And then obviously, at least with me, I know it's always going to happen. We'll always go on a rant sideways that has, conversation can go anywhere, which is how I think conversations should be. We might have topics that we want to cover, but at the end of the day, I'm human, you're human, and this is what we do, right? We strike conversations, and they might start here but end up there somewhere. So yeah.
Okay, so I was gonna start by talking about the my first fight that went to see cage side.
Yes, let's talk about that. So the setup was Noah Mannion, who was a guest on my podcast several times. I've been following him since his amateur career. I caught up his last 3 fights, I think, and really, really nice guy, great fighter. The reason why we connected is because he's sponsored by the same sponsor that I have, which is Mahler MMA.
Sure.
And that's how we got connected. He had his pro debut scheduled for the AFS MMA, Asylum Fight Series MMA. And I got in touch with that show, and I told them this is what I do. I cover the MMA scene, amateur pro debuts, all that stuff. And can I get access to the show and do cage side coverage, backstage interviews, that kind of stuff? And I showed them what I did for, Clan Wars, Cage Legacy, IUR, and all that. Yeah. And they said, absolutely no problem at all. And I was like, okay, answer is yes. On to problem number 2. I can't be there in person. Who do I know that lives locally that can go there? And there you go. We had spoken about this the week before. We already spoke a few times. I've been on your show. Now I'm co-hosting the show with you. So it made sense that I asked you, do you want to go on my behalf? And since you haven't had that experience yet, I am very looking forward to hearing from you what you thought of it and all that. Yeah. So let's get into that. What did you think?
Well, at first, I was apprehensive about attending. I thought that, the sport of mixed martial arts itself, combat sports as a whole, in general, I mean, when you look at the athletes when they're competing, when they're performing in the ring, on the cage, on the mat, wherever it is, you do get I personally get the impression that these guys are quite intimidating. They don't take nonsense. And even if you just ask them a question that, even if it's a question, it's a normal question, nothing stupid, nothing too private, encroaching. If they're not in the mood, they might turn around and bite your head off. So I was thinking, no, this is not. I may, from the outside, from the sidelines, I might be, happy to sit and watch and talk about it. Fine, but it's actually
you've been watching too much Rampage Jackson or Brock Lesnar, because those are the only 2 guys. Maybe Nate Diaz even. Maybe those are the only guys that actually talk back to the media or anything. Everybody else is like cool with it, I think.
Yeah.
if that makes sense. And like, especially at this stage, like all fighters know you're there to help them, right?
It depends on the fighter.
Tell me one fighter that is an amateur or just had his pro debut,
well, when
and they don't care about media. Do you know what I mean?
Okay, amateur. Okay, now that I understand. If it's the much more professional, let's say even the elite level, the big names, not necessarily just the UFC, but the other promotions, Bellator, One Championship, PFL, Cage Warriors, those guys, maybe because I think they now feel they have some sort of, let's say, elite like
too much
or elite
exposure.
level. Yes, like they say, I have to get the right journalist or the right person, or even the right person altogether. Even asking me anything at all, if it comes from the wrong person, then I just won't have the patience, because I don't feel that it's good. There's no value in this for me, first of all. So there's no reason why.
Right? That's why I'm not covering UFC. That's why I'm not in the Bellator covering their show. That's why I'm not in Cage Warriors. I'm doing these local shows right now, 1 year in, to learn everything that I need to learn, make all the mistakes that I need to make, in the same sort of way that an amateur fighter has their amateur fights to learn, make mistakes, lose, all those things, and improve as a fighter before they step on the pro leagues. I'm doing the same. I'm doing the small shows first, get to know everybody, get to know how the shows work inside and from, what goes in the back that people don't see. And then, like what I told you, like my 10-year plan, in 10 years, I'll be doing UFCs and Bellators and that stuff. But it's going to take time. I do realize I'm not just going to jump from A to Z. There's a whole journey to go through until we get there. But again, even at the top of the game, which is UFC, most fighters are very good to the media. Most fighters, like you can literally count on your fingers the ones that are not friendly to the media. So yeah, and again, most fighters have time for their fans, take photos and this and that and all that. So yeah, I think your perception is a bit off in that regard.
Maybe, yeah.
Rampage Jackson is the one that has problems with Ariel Helwani, and that's about it.
I think a lot of fighters actually, and even a lot of other journalists and a lot of other fight promoters, the people behind the fight, those particular promoters, they've taken issue with Ariel Helwani in the past.
Oh yeah, he's a dick.
Yeah. I think he comes across as quite innocent and confused. There's, when you look at him, he's asking you something. From what I've seen, he looks almost like innocent and confused. And I'm just asking a question here. I don't know anything about anything, but I'm just asking a simple question based on what I'm seeing. And then probably later on, he goes and probably twists what that's been said in the interview, in the interaction, and then he kind of upsets the person he's interviewing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
He did that to Nick Diaz, I think, whenever it was his return against JSP or something. And Dana White was like stepping in, like, I know what you're doing, this and that, la 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 la. But yeah, but that's the thing, dick journalist, you're going to get a dick reaction out of the fighter. So how do you see yourself? How do you carry yourself? Is then going to have the same effect from the fighter. You're a friendly guy. You're very well spoken. Like, well, why would anybody turn to you and say, I don't know, this is some bullshit, bro, or I don't know. Like, there's no reason for anybody to do that. Like, you're there on the show, so like you already have the advantage that you're there face to face, right?
Yeah.
And we both know from life experience, you are less likely to get into a confrontation face to face than you are over the internet, right? Over the internet, you get all the keyboard warriors and like, oh, fuck you, and you piece of shit, and you suck, and all this. But when they are face to face, they shut their fucking mouth and they say nothing, right? So now a fighter, right? A fighter, this is very important for people to understand. A fighter has a on and off switch, and they literally save that switch for getting in the cage, kicking ass, turn it off after that. It's over, right? So they normally have a lot of self-control, and outside the cage, they're like the nicest people you'll ever meet in your life. And if anyone's watching this, and if you've trained, you know, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or MMA or anything like that, you know what I'm saying is true. Everybody in the martial arts community tend to be like the nicest people ever, because they have those things under control, the anger, the rage, whatever, it's all under control. And yeah, they practice that on and off switch. When it's time to spar, when it's time to fight, when, like, that's when you turn it on and you let yourself go. And it's up to the ref to kind of pull you off and stop you from doing, you know, committing murder inside the cage, really. You know. But then, okay, it's over. You see most fighters hug each other after the fight.
You said
you
most? Yeah, well,
yeah, most do.
Yeah.
Most shake hands at least. So I would say, as a pyramid, it's like, when the fight's over, the very top is like, okay, the guys that don't shake hands, like Khabib and McGregor kind of shit. But you go down that pyramid, and most at least shake hands, you know, and obviously, yeah, some hug it out, some don't. So yeah, so after the fight's over, the competition aspect of the game, it's done and dusted. And again, they do the media stuff and all that, and yeah, you're there to help them. Yeah, for sure.
Speaking of which, I mean, and also when it comes to the interviews, I mean, I would have stood next to Noah. I would have done, but I was thinking, I don't know this person. They don't know me. They know you, but they don't know me fully. They're not acquainted with me. So I was thinking I should stand just like as in 50 yards away from him, look at him and face my device at him, point the camera lens at him, then conduct the interview that way. As I said to you before, when you show me an example, when you're interviewing someone else, you're standing right next to them. But okay, that's fine. That makes more sense because you can hear what's being said in the interaction. You see, I would have done
it's
that.
It's a normal
but,
conversation. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm just having a normal conversation from a fan to a fighter. And like, do you watch football or do you follow football?
Sometimes I watch it. Yeah.
Say that you're, I don't know, Cristiano Ronaldo's fan, and after the match, you're able to like stand there next to him and ask him questions as a fan. Like, most people would lose their shit doing that, right? So that's the opportunity that I'm getting by doing all this work and covering all these fighters. And after the fights, I get a moment to speak with them, you know. And even before the fights, I'm sure if you had arrived earlier, you would have been able to go to the backstage, talk to Noah, talk to Abano, talk to their coaches, all that shit. You would have broken the ice. You would have told them after the fight, I'm interviewing the winners. Like, I do all that work before before the event even starts.
You stand in the back, say in the changing room, and say, I'll be interviewing all the winners, just as in some sort of announcement. Yeah, but
no,
the thing is,
no. You misunderstood me there. Because of all the COVID restrictions, each team has its own locker room kind of thing.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So, like, in the backstage, at least from when I started to now, every single team has its own corner. They don't cross corners, you know, just to avoid any COVID transmissions and all that.
Yeah.
So each team, it has its own bubble, right? So I go to, for example, SPG Ireland, greet the coaches, how are you doing, all this and that, blah, blah, blah. I see the fighters warming up or getting their hands wrapped and this and that. I go talk to them, even the ones that I don't know. Like, I have my t-shirt saying Prospect MMA, like most of the people know who I am. And just say good luck with the fight. Because at this stage, I don't know who's going to win, right? I don't. And I'm sure they want to win the fight, no doubt about that, but they don't know either. So all I can do is a neutral statement, good luck for your fight. And after the fight, I'm doing post-fight interviews with the winners. so I'll catch you backstage or anything like that. And just leave it like that, you know. So they kind of know already. And again, imagine my very first event that I went. I didn't have the opportunity to interview everybody. So there were fighters that I didn't know, that I haven't spoken with. But on that day, I made the point of introducing myself, saying hello, blah, blah, blah. I arrived like 2 hours earlier, you know.
Okay.
So the way it worked is they emailed the timeline, and the timeline for the teams was like 4 hours earlier to get COVID checks and this and that. And then 2 hours was media arrival. And then whatever time the event started. So I arrived as early as possible to get my media in. So I was literally the first guy at the event, as it was my first event. And yeah, I got my COVID testing, and I had to sign like waivers and this and that, blah, 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 paperwork. And man, I was shitting bricks, and like, I can't understate that enough. I was shitting bricks in the same way that you told me like you were this and that. I'm like, yeah, I totally get it. That's how I was feeling as well. But you know, I just kept my shit together, like, you know, what's on the inside nobody can see on the outside, kind of thing. You know. And yeah, I just went about my day. And then the guy from MMA Island arrived, and he arrived like at the end of the 2 hours of the media, you know, timeline thing. So he pretty much just went straight upstairs. He didn't speak with anybody, but obviously it wasn't his first rodeo. He knew what he was doing, that kind of stuff. I didn't, so that's why I went there earlier. And then yeah, and then as I went, like the person from the event took us and said, this is your table, this is where you report from. You can then go from here to the cage. You can take 30-second clips, you can post them, you can take the fighters, the gym, clan wars, this and that. So they literally told me everything that I could do and what I couldn't do, right? So because I was like wondering, like, what the fuck am I allowed to do? I'm surely not allowed to stream a fight because people are paying for this. So okay, I'm not going to do that. Can I take pictures? Can I, like, what can I do? So I just waited, and then somebody came, got us, and they said, okay, this is what you do. Okay, cool. So now I know what I can do. So the reason why I told you to stream the fights is because I saw Abeno's brother streaming the fight from his account on Instagram. So I'm like, okay, if he can do that, then I can do that as well. It was his account. I'm not sure who was holding the phone, because I know he was doing corner work, but he was streaming from his account, and I'm like, if he can do it, then I'm sure I can do it too. Because again, if you had arrived at the beginning, they would have told you, like, you can do this or that, or you can't do this, or you can't do that. So I kind of just took it like, if he can do it, then I probably can do it too. And I did it, and I tagged them in all of the posts, so they always get the credit, and keep myself right that way. It's not like I'm trying to hide or anything. They get all the credit for it. And yeah, at the end, the next day, they said, thank you very much, and this and that. They never raised an eyebrow. They never said anything. So Cage Legacy has the same approach, and the IUR has the same approach. I'm basically an extra cameraman at those shows, where I'm allowed to just take footage from different angles, and I can then post the full fight if I want to. But with Clan Wars is different, so yeah. But anyway, all this to say that, what was the point? What was your question? Sorry.
No, basically, my main question is breaking the ice. Breaking the ice and just feeling at ease when you go to these events, that these guys who are very, very, you see, really, really passionate when they're going on the offensive in the cage, then when they're competing, that they're not always like that outside of the cage. And, you know, I can see that. Noah, I can see when he won that night. And when I went to see him in the changing rooms, he was really calm, collected, really quiet. He does not like an outspoken.
All the adrenaline is gone, you know, like. The
Mhm.
adrenaline was like super high up, jacked up to 100%, and then like you get a massive drop. And I've seen stuff in the backstage that people don't get to see. And I'm sure Kieran is not going to mind me saying this, but Kieran Brady, he always gets sick in the back after winning the fight. You know, because he gets like an adrenaline dump, and whatever happens, he goes to the back. He's literally sick, like he throws up everywhere.
Mm.
Um, so that's a reaction that he has in his body, adrenaline dump. There are some fighters that cry in the back. Like those are things that you don't see as a fan, you know, from sitting on your couch, sitting on the chair, you're watching on
Yeah,
TV.
yeah.
You have no fucking clue what goes in the back. And to see that and witness that and just being part of that, for me, like, again, as a fan, it's the most invaluable experience that you can have, because now I'm not just a fan. I'm actually working in the industry. I'm actually doing something to help these guys. Like, so it has transcended at that point. But basically, just so that all this makes sense to whoever's listening, the reason why you didn't get on time to that event is because you had some car problems, right? So you didn't get on there on
Yes.
time. You weren't able
Not
to.
not just that. When I got there, the car park was absolutely full, rammed. That the leisure center has a small car
Yeah,
park in this front, but
that's why you gotta
like
arrive 2 hours
yeah,
early to get a spot.
because yeah.
Get a spot, but yeah, you tell us. So you park the car. What happens next? What did you do?
No, well, I couldn't park in the actual car park, so I parked in the main road outside of the building. Where I parked, you can still see the building itself. So I
Yeah.
parked in nearby on the main road. Then
What
I
did the
walked
building look like? Was it like
like
a
well,
proper venue, stadium? Like what was it?
not like a well,
Warehouse?
not like a no, a leisure center. You know, a leisure center it has a swimming pool,
Okay.
gym, saunas.
So they were
That sort of
using
place.
what, like the sports hall of the laser
That's it.
center?
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Okay.
That's
Okay.
it.
Carry on. Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
so I think they'd kind of arranged it so the cage itself would be in the middle of the sports hall, and then the
Yes. Yes.
seating for the audience would be on one side, and the stage where the fighters would be coming would be on this side. The judges we sit there, sound crew, the technicians are sitting on the other side. So where the actual competition, the fights will be taking place will be centralized, and everybody will be gathered around this. And entrance, like with security and stuff, all of that outside.
Okay. Perfect.
When I arrived, there was a particular lady that I'm not sure if she worked at the center, if she was working on behalf of AFS as their reception.
Okay.
I can't remember what her name was. Nice, she was a nice lady. But I think she wouldn't let me go anywhere until I could confirm who I was and why I was actually there. Then eventually a
Right.
guy calls it Mario or so, an Italian guy from AFS came out to meet me. I told him who I was here on behalf of, what I was going to be doing here. And he said, yeah, great. Thanks for coming. Welcome. Shook my hand and yeah, led me down into the
So
actual
you were expected, right?
yes. But I mean, the guy that you
So the
spoke
wordiness went off off his shoulders.
it started
Uh-huh.
to lift. But the guy that you spoke to that arranged the whole thing for me to come and watch, who was that? Was his
Yeah.
name Mario?
No, 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 no. It's like a Indian or Pakistani name. I can't pronounce it
Okay.
right now, but it's the guy running the show or the guy in charge of all the social media.
I
Because
see.
what happened was, um, when I was telling you I'm waiting for details, right? The guy said I'll send you the details, but then he didn't, and then I messaged again, and instead of sending me the details, he just called me on my phone, and like number that I didn't recognize, I answered, and he said his name. Oh, this is such and such, or of
Okay.
AFS MMA, blah blah blah. You're welcome to come on. Thank you so much. This and that, blah 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 blah. And I was like, oh sweet, okay, cool, thank you. So it was cool on that one to get a personal phone call from the guy
Yeah, yeah.
organizing the event and just going that extra mile to make us feel welcomed and part of the show and all that. So yeah, so that's when I sent you all the details, what I had. Uh, And yeah, but yeah, carry on. So the guy came, Mario came, he got
No,
you,
yeah,
and then what?
I think they gave me like an all access pass, like a band I would wear around my wrist. I went down to the actual venue itself, sat down. Tried to sit in the front row, just one of the front rows behind the barrier, but there's still like a demarcation between audience
I
and
got
the
a
actual
question
cage
there
itself.
because I
Yeah.
wanted to ask you that. Did the thing said like all access or anything like that, or
And I
did
think
he say cage side access, or what did he say?
I've got it somewhere in my coat, but it did have some branding on there, but the color was of like a what's the name you can use? It was like like a glowing yellow, so sort of a cross between a very pale green and a pale yellow, kind of glow in the
Send me a picture whenever we're done with this, just so I can see it. But my question is, did the guy tell you you can go past the barriers? Did he say you can't go past the barriers? Did he say you can go
No,
backstage, or what? Like, what did
they
he
did.
tell you?
They didn't tell me what I could and couldn't do. They didn't give me like a run through of what I was allowed to and was not allowed to do. But when I asked to do certain things, when I asked where can I sit, it said sit anywhere. When I asked, could I go backstage? You can go backstage. I think when I was speaking to one of the security guards there, now this is inside next to the cage, they did say that when I wanted to go backstage, I think they said at certain points that no one's allowed back there. And they said, I think at certain times, some fighters probably had already gone home for the day, because I don't think every single fighter after stayed back at
Right.
least to the end
Yes.
of the whole
Yes.
event. So I think it's just after. So I didn't necessarily have to be quite forceful or assertive to actually get to the backstage. I think just after a small 30-second chat with one of the guys, that actually took me back to the backstage where I interviewed Noah. I met his team
Right.
and I met him. Yeah, there's because I
Right.
at
Okay.
this stage you'd ask me to go, then forget about the actual main event itself.
I see what you mean. But yeah, so this is where it's really important to arrive earlier so you can have this conversation, for example, with the guy Mario. I'm sure if he's like stopping what he's doing to come to the front to greet whoever in the middle of the event running, like he needs to be quick versus
Yeah,
an hour or 2 hours before the event starts. That's
yes,
when he
yes,
has time to deal with these things and show you go here, you go there. Because like literally at all the events, you always get someone to say, oh, you can come all the way here, all the way there. You can go past the barriers here, go past here. There's cameras on this side, cameras on that side. So don't go this way and don't go that way, that kind of stuff. Um, so, and again, you have like 2 hours to kill. You know, the security, like the place is nearly empty, right? Besides the teams and the fighters. So they see you walking around back and forward, and they see you going to the backstage, talking to the fighters. They see you coming to the front, going to the cage side. So when the event starts and there's a full crowd, they know you're
yeah,
one of the guys. They know you're
yes,
one
yeah,
of the staff. They don't have to worry about you. You're not just a random person trying to
yeah,
get access to the backstage, that kind of stuff. So just really important for the next event, whatever that happens to be, whether it's the UKFC in Bolton, I think that's what it is, or whether it's the Cage Warriors in Colchester, Essex. How do you say it?
Essex,
Essex or Essex?
Colchester is in the county of Essex.
County of Essex.
Essex, yeah,
S. Fuck. Yeah.
Essex.
Yes. Sometimes there's words that I can't say, but I have a stutter as well, in case you haven't noticed. So I have a stutter, and
Do you really?
sometimes, yeah. And like if you go check episode number 1 and 2 and 3, like it has like improved so much with all this talking, but it's still there and it still happens sometimes. But anyway, yeah. So those are things that, for example, the second event with Clan Wars, same security staff, same working staff. They already know who I am. Like I don't have to talk to anybody, right? Basically, and everybody greets me and this and that. And then because I've done Clan Wars 1, 2, and 3, and then I go to Cage Legacy, everybody at Cage Legacy already knows me because I've already done so many post-fight interviews with so many fighters. Some of the fighters from the Clan Wars are also fighting at Cage Legacy. You know, I had the Declan on the podcast. I had some of his fighters on the podcast, that kind of stuff. So like at that stage, it just kind of becomes repetitive, the people that you see. So the coaches are the same. Some of the fighters are the same. Some of the fighters are cornering other fighters. They may not be fighting, but they are still there. They still see you. They still greet you and this and that. Like I went to Clan Wars 42 and Kieran Clark was there, the professional fighter he had on from Bellator. He was there cornering one of his amateur dudes, right? So I'm like, holy shit, hey Kieran, how are you, bro? And then, you know, I had him on the podcast. We always stayed in touch since December last year as in 2020, not 2021, which is when I had them on the podcast for the first time. Again, we are sponsored by the same company. Air Muscle sponsors the both of us, and Mahler sponsors the both of us. So that was like pretty cool, where it just feels like we already know each other, you know, because we already spoke so many times and this and that. So seeing each other for the first time face to face is just like second nature now. And then at the same show, I then met Reese McKee. That one was like total fanboy, because I was like, oh shit, that's Reese McKee. For the people that don't know, he's the reason why I decided to start the podcast. When I saw him in the UFC and they announced that he's from Ballymena, which is like 45 minutes away from where I live, driving. And I was like, oh shit, I didn't know we had like UFC caliber fighters right here on the corner. I knew about Conor McGregor, you know, but Conor McGregor is in Dublin, which is like 200 miles away from me, where Reese McKee is like right here, you know. I just had no idea that we had that level of caliber fighters that were capable of going to the UFC. So that's when I decided, okay, I want to know all these guys before they get there. How can I do that? What are they called? They're called prospects. Okay, Prospect MMA podcast. That's it. That's the name.
And that's how the name came about.
Yeah, and I remember telling my wife, and she's like, "That sounds stupid." Yeah, my wife said, like, "What does that even mean?" And then I had to explain to her, like, prospect are the guys coming up and this and that, and then she's like, "Oh, why don't you call this, or why don't you call that, or blah blah blah." I'm like, no, this is what's going to be. So I went on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, took the name out of all of those, and yeah, started going to work. So when I saw Reese there, he was cornering Corey McLaughlin, which I had on the podcast. He was one of the nominees for Knockout of the Year. He had an 8-second knockout at the last Clan Wars VIP event, which I was like really surprised by. Yeah, he was there cornering one of these guys, and as I'm walking towards him, he like recognizes me and smiles at me and all that, and I'm like, okay, he knows who I am, because I'm shitting bricks at this stage, and I'm like, does he know? Like, is he gonna know that we had a podcast like a year ago, and he was on my podcast and this and that? But yeah, of course he remembered. And yeah, like things like that people don't really think of, you know. Like, you might go to any of these events, right?
Yeah.
And you might see Michael Venom page at one of these events. You could come across Brett Pickett, or you could come across Michael Bisping, or like any of these guys, like Dan Hardy. Dan Hardy attends a lot of these events. So you're talking about a lot of these UFC level athletes that were athletes or are still athletes, like what's the name? Darren Till. Yeah, I was having a blank there. Darren Till, you know, like you can literally come across some of these guys in events like this.
Yeah.
Like I had Rafael, can't remember his name, out of Team Calbon on the podcast, and he was at the UKFC main event, right? He won by submission. Who was in his corner? Michael Grundy, Darren Till. two UFC fighters, you know. Mike Grundy came over to Clan Wars to corner Kiernan Loughran. So one of his fighters from Team Cowbon. He was also cornering Ali McLean. So like, I would never think I'm going to meet an active UFC fighter, you know, like especially a really good one. Mike Grundy's like a really good one at one of these events. And yet I did, you know, like, so again, it just goes back to that thing of, as a fan, I can't ask anymore, you know, in return.
Yeah, the work's now coming to you. Oh, well.
The what, sorry?
The work is not coming to you. The fans, the promoters, the fights are not coming to you. But I have to admit,
that is so fucking awesome.
Going to the event, going to the event that I was apprehensive at first, but at the end of it, when I went home that evening, I was thinking to myself, I'm actually glad that I went to this, because it's helped break the ice a little bit. It's helped me get to know the fighters, at least the amateur fighters, a little bit better. At least in the case of AFS, the guys that I still fight, especially Noah, it's helped me get to know them a little bit better. And they really are not the sort of animalistic athletes you see in the cage. Some of them are really collected, very articulate, very intelligent. You know, they're not that sort of barbaric sorts of individuals. They're not like that at all. I mean, it looks that way because that's the sport. That's how you have to compete if you want to win, and if you want to be successful, you have to do that. But on the outside, like you said, with that switch, there's a switch that they have. They can turn it on when they're competing and turn it off when they're not competing. You know, they can control their rank, they can control their emotions. So no, I'm glad I went, and I'm looking forward to the next one. Whether you invite me, or whether when someone else invites me. You know, so I'm really looking forward to the next one. In terms of the
like, I think this is where my work starts transcending me as a person, and like, I know that I cannot be everywhere, and I cannot personally cover all the events. And this is where I start, building my team and getting people under me, where I'm going to need someone in Scotland, which is not going to be you, because you're not going to go to Scotland. And I'm going to need someone in the south of Ireland, because that's fucking 5 hours away driving for me, and I'm not going to do that,
I know it sounds silly, but would you ever consider maybe flying or going by coach or going by train to a long haul, that's a faraway destination within the same country as you?
I will, if I'm being paid for it. I will not do it for free. I literally need to be paid for it. So Chaos Grappling is the first promotion that offered to pay me to do coverage for them, and I declined because I didn't think it would be fair. Since I didn't charge all the other promotions, it's not fair for me to charge them, since it's the first event that I'm doing as well for them. And Chaos Grappling, for those who don't know, it's where Conor McGregor fought some of his first professional fights. It was in that show. Paddy, the Hooligan Houlihan, James Gallagher, and the list goes on. So like top Irish fighters, like James Gallagher is now in the bantamweight tournament for Bellator, the $1 million tournament. Obviously, we all know who Conor McGregor is, and Paddy, the Hooligan Houlihan. If you go watch some of the first fight, I think it was fight number 1 or 2, he was on the same card as Conor McGregor when he had his debut in the UFC. So this is like a show with a lot of history, and I want to just be part of it, just for the sake of being part of it. Yeah. But I can already see that door is opening up for me, where shows may start, offering, okay, here's at least, whatever for your expenses, or, for your time, or like, it doesn't have to be a lot, but at the end of the day, I have to make it viable in the sense of I need to be able to stay consistent and keep going, keep covering. So there's no point, like, I haven't said this on my podcast yet, but I got an invite from a promotion in Dubai last year to go to in November. And they said they would cover my stay. So all I had to do is cover my flights. They would cover the stay for me to go. And they wanted me to basically drop all the podcasts that I'm doing, only interviewed their fighters until the beginning of the event and this and that. And I looked at the flights, and the flights were like fucking 1,500 pounds. And I'm like, I don't have that kind of money. So I had to decline that offer, you know. I told them, like, okay, this is how much the flights are. Is there any possibility you can chip in here? Did this and that. I asked Air Muscle, I asked Hellbent, Mahler. They all offered to chip in, but whatever was the you know, the rest to cover, I couldn't cover the rest myself. And that's something that I always told my wife from the day one. I will never take food away from my kids. I have 4 kids to put into this. So that was a decision that I made. So I couldn't cover that event. Okay. So that event was out the window. But it doesn't mean that in the future I'm not going to, you know.
Hold on. If they're asking you for a favor, shouldn't they cover those costs?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I guess so. They did offer to cover the stay, like I said. The stay
they should cover everything.
They should cover everything. Yeah, I know, because they do that for a bunch of fighters. So it's like one more person really, and that's about it. And I think they are literally just coming for me just because of either the following or because of the way that I do the podcast. It has to be one or the other. I don't know.
Well, you have to. Well, I have to give you credit because where you put out content usually because you use Instagram Live and it's fast, so you put at least you do way more quicker than I could because I'm gonna like after doing this now, I have to edit it, do the sound and everything, make sure everything is as good as it can possibly be, and then upload it to the internet. So I think that's one of the benefits that you have over myself. But in terms of the finances, they should cover that. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, no, I agree. And then there shows like Soko FC in Luxembourg. It's going to happen in June. So we are in talks right now. So it may be that in June I'll be able to fly over to Luxembourg and cover that event because I've been covering that event since their event number 1 from home. I had fighters on the podcast and this and that, and I promoted their stream, the link of the stream on my podcast and all that stuff. So there are doors opening up and things like that. But again, for me, it makes sense if I can, for example, get a freelancer that already lives in Luxembourg that can just drive over to the event and just report from there instead, and if the event is in Dubai, then get somebody from Dubai that loves MMA like I do, and that can just go to the event and report from there and so on. So that's kind of the direction that I see this going. And then as my kids grow up and as time goes by, then I might be able to attend some of these events myself or, get something going on. But I'm not in a rush. I'm enjoying the process. I'm enjoying the journey and the process. Like yesterday, I was talking to Jornel Lugo, a professional fighter, Bellator, 7-0. He's coming to Ireland. So the first time that I had him on the podcast, he was just fighting the US, 5-0. 2 fights later, he's coming over to Dublin, and I have a chance of meeting him. Like, that's a crazy thing. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's how small the world of martial arts is. Whenever I had them on the podcast for the first time, like, for example, Dre, you're going to have Dre on the podcast. What if you can meet him tomorrow because he comes over to a Cage Warriors event, Like, that's how small the world is of martial arts. Somebody can literally pick up the phone because they saw us talking to them and get in touch with them and be like, oh, here, I want you to fly over and fight against such and such a bantamweight. Do you want it? Yeah, cool. Okay. And the next thing you know, you're covering that event as well. You meet the guy there, like that kind of stuff. So pretty cool as a fan again.
No, it is good. Right. There's a few things I want to cover. I mean, I should have Dre on here. I told now it's about midday both here in the UK and in Ireland. I did say that I'd try and get Dre on around this time. Let me just see if we can
And is he just going to join us, and will this be just a
I don't
continuous
know.
episode?
I think we'll have to. I'll disconnect and then rejoin. It, would you prefer that? Because I think my machine needs to be rebooted a little bit.
Yeah. I'll prefer that because I'm gonna have to put my phone on the charge as well.
Sure.
Because
Okay.
the battery, when it started, was like up. This is not gonna be on the shot, right? What we're talking about right now, it's not gonna be on the episode, right?
It is.
It is.
But
Okay,
no, it's
cool.
not that bad. I mean, it's authentic, you know, but it's not. It's nothing silly, you know. It's nothing silly.
No,
So.
It's just all the technical aspects and logistics and stuff. I guess some people will have an interest in that and knowing what goes in the background and all those things. Just while you're doing that, so anyone can follow Prospect MMA podcast on Instagram. On Twitter is Prospect MMA Pod One, because you can't write the whole thing. And on YouTube is the same thing, Prospect MMA podcast. Yours is Ike
Ike
_ MMA, right?
No, Ike MMA. I can't even remember. I should know. It's Ike MMA. When you punch it into Instagram, the actual handle comes up. But Ike MMA, the correct spell will be there anyway. Yeah,
That's another cool thing. I googled Prospect MMA podcast,
yeah.
and I'm like, I'm on the first page, so I'm like, hey.
Oh, good. I think when you see
Prospect
that,
MMA podcast comes up on the first page. So I'm like, fuck yeah, there you go.
no, but I think when you see that, I think though it may not mean anything to some people, but I think what it suggests is that your content, the online presence of your content is growing or so. I guess.
Yes. The guys from Hellbent, they are actually helping me with that stuff as well. Like that's, for example, a conversation that I'm having with them as a sponsor. Instead of sending me more meat every month, can they just get me stuff? For example, their marketing department seems to be like really good. So they are like, we're in conversations of them setting me up with a website where I can upload all the episodes on the website, for example, and just have a RSS feed in there so people can subscribe and listen to it without having to be, on Spotify or iTunes or all these podcast platforms, that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's getting there. It's getting there for sure. But yeah, like, what else did I wanted to ask you? I wanted to ask you, so from the AFS event, you went there, you sat by the barriers, which is as close as you can. As a fan, I guess the only way to get closer is if you would be a coach or if you were like a judge or a photographer, maybe, because I know I have the same access that the photographers get at these events that I'm doing here. So
right.
They are normally cage side, taking photos like as close to the cage as they can. Like that's the cage and that's their camera, like right there. If they could stick the camera inside, they would.
You can't. You're getting the way of the two fighters.
Yeah, but you can't. It's dangerous if a fighter falls or something against the camera. Yeah. But anyway, like for you, so for you as a fan of MMA, from what you see in the house or on your computer, all the UFCs you've watched, all the Bellators you've watched, all the footage you've watched for all the fighters you had on the podcast, homework, all that, how did that compare to you being there in person, live, watching the event?
This is something that I wish you probably asked me earlier, and I wish I probably would have raised the issue earlier in this episode. Nothing compares to actually being their cage side, because not just what's happening in the cage, also what's happening around you in the audience. I was sitting at the frontmost row next to the cage, and I was watching the fight. Good fight, and it's almost like watching. It's like watching should I say this, like watching a street fight there I say outside the venue.
Exactly.
But obviously, it's within a controlled setting, within a controlled environment, and that was great. But at the same time, I have to say, what was going on in the audience, the things were being set up. The audience, those people people who are rooting for this fighter and then the other people rooting for the other fighter. And you know, you hear the things that some people are saying, because at the event they were serving alcohol, I think. So that these two girls that were, I think, when
Oh, dude, I have some stories about that. But yeah, carry on, carry on.
no, these two girls out saying, yeah, hit I think during the fight between the Irish guy and the Muslim guy who was wearing blue shorts, and is it
Monza?
yes, Moza and
Yes.
Abunab. I think
Abeno,
he's Abunab,
Forest.
yeah. I think he's half
Just call him
Irish, half
Forest.
Forest. Yeah,
Yeah. He has that. Yeah.
yeah. And I think when those two were fighting, the two girls to my back, on the right of me, behind of me, and they had been drinking. And if you hear what these girls were saying, here in the face, isn't just because I think they're so intoxicated, they're just saying anything for just to support the guy to just get him to win the fight. I was like, Jesus Christ!
Did you get any of those good old dick twist his dick?
I think
that
I did hear something like that.
TikTok going on? Like
No,
there's
what?
a TikTok going viral of a dude that's clearly drunk out of his mind in a MMA event, and he's like, twist his dick, the good old dick twister. And the guy's just filming in the selfie, just laughing his ass off, and the woman is like losing her shit, crying, laughing as well. So like the two people in front of him are filming the guy, which is like standing, behind them.
Yeah.
And like dick twist, like he's even doing like the motion and everything. And the guy's like, "This is an MMA fight. You're not allowed that." And did this and that. Like the funniest thing ever. I'll send you that if I can find it. Yeah, funniest thing ever. But like at events, especially the Clan Wars one, the ones where alcohol was being served. So just for reference, the first Clan Wars that I did was no crowds. The second IURs that I did, no alcohol. Cage Legacy, also no crowds. So the only event that I've been with crowds has been the latest Clan Wars, where full crowds, alcohol being served. Those events, like I said, I always arrive early, right? I always arrive early, all the crew stuff and all this and that. Everybody knows me. What I didn't expect, when everybody arrives, all the guests, right? The amount of people that know me and like, oh, Prospect and this and that, and oh, I watch your podcast and I follow you and this and that, and people asking me, like, I'm literally like cage side, and guy comes from behind me and is like, oh, can I take a picture with you? I'm like, yeah, cool.
Wow.
Like, oh, can you come over to my friends and we'll take a picture here? Yeah, I'm like, yeah, cool. Like things like that. And then as the hours go by and everybody's like drunk out of their mind, and you see people tripping up and shit, and all that stuff. And there's this one guy, he like, I'm walking by, he's like, oh, Prospect, blah, 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 and this and that, and he's like, heavy arm around me, like, oh, I love your podcast, man, and this and that, and like, I don't want to be impolite or anything like that, so I'm like, oh, thank you so much, and this and that. Then the guy kisses me on the cheek. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, what the fuck is going on here? Yeah, but like, yeah, thank you, blah blah blah, and I go about my way as I was trying to get like to the backstage for an interview or something. But yeah, like funny stuff, like.
Now, okay, so you're kind of like giving me an insight on what to expect if I stick with this and be consistent, right? That's what you're telling me.
Basically, like, again, I guess it all depends on the following, right? The following that I have gathered has been the followers of the guests that I had. Okay.
Yes, okay.
Right, and 315 episodes in, I would say over 200 of them are all from Ireland or Northern Ireland, right? And fairly consistent with, the gyms and the teams that I interview and that stuff. And they happen to be the same fighters and the same coaches that I said earlier on that attend these events. So then the people that they bring to the events, the tickets that they sell to their friends and family are the same people that are watching me online interviewing their fighter, interviewing their friend, interviewing their family. So this is local to me, right? So I interview mostly local fighters that will be at local events that I can attend. So I developed the podcast that way, right? Yeah, so I can't really tell you if, for example, you have, say, Dre from the US, and then you have somebody from Italy and somebody from France and this and that. I can't guarantee you that you're going to get the same response if you're like being diversified versus being focused on one thing. Where I'm mainly focused on the Irish scene first and foremost, right? So I'm here to promote these guys so that when one of them rises to Conor McGregor status, I'm like right there with him. Like, I've seen all these fights. I've been to events where he's been. I've seen his growth as a fighter. All those things, right? He keeps coming for interviews, even when he's famous. He won't forget about me, whoever that might be. You know, so like I'm right there. And then if I have time, I'll interview somebody else and I'll get somebody else on. But my bread and butter is
the local scene,
the people that I can help. Yeah, the people that I can help, which are my local fighters, the people that live around me. That's the work that I want to do. I want to be able to help the people around here. Yeah, so
of course,
I guess I'm a bit different in that sense versus other podcasts.
No, that I think is what you're supposed to do. But I think if you're in a country whereby the sport is massive in that country, as in terms of, say, UFC, Bellator, One Championship, that sort of status, if it's really, really big in where you're based, and you already have a lot of podcasts and a lot of journalists already talking about the sport, already doing what we're doing now, then, you know, they say that market is heavily saturated. And as a smaller podcaster, you know, it's really, really hard to guess in there, probably even with the amateur scene in that same country. Like I was speaking to Corey Harris the other day. He's going to be fighting Cage Warriors, I think sometime the 12th of March. I did speak to him. He said to me, I'd like to do a fight with you. I'd like to do a podcast with you. But what was his response? I think he said he wanted to do it not this week. It would have to be sometime probably later on, probably even after the fight. He wants to concentrate on just his fight camp, just making sure he's physically, medically, and mentally prepared for the competition itself. I mean, talked to his coach, and his coach said, look, if there's anything you need, you can reach out to me, and if it's something I can help you with, I can do just that. I said, great, thanks. I may even have you on the podcast with him, or I can interview you guys separately. But I have to say, it's not just what you've said about the focusing on the scene. I have to, and me going to the event like I did go to the past weekend on Saturday, that did help me get out of my comfort zone a little bit. But it's still that breaking the ice issue, you know, just not feeling nervous, not feeling scared.
Just arrive early next time. That will literally fix it. Like, no jokes, not trying to press the button under the same thing, but that's literally all you got to do. Just arrive early, 1 to 2 hours early before. Like, an hour early is when everybody starts queuing in to get in, right? So you got to get an hour even before that, so that nobody's there. Only the fighters and the coaches, because they need to go through the rules meeting, which is where the referees, where they go through everything. They need to do their health checks. They need to get their hands wrapped. So, like, there's this whole thing that goes on in the backstage that people don't see happening. And most fighters arrive like 4 hours before. And then, media arrives like 2 hours before, and so on. So if you just do that for the next event, you will be like set. Because now you're in a position where you have 2 hours to kill. You know exactly what you got to do cage side, but you still have to wait 2 hours until you get there. So you're not just going to sit at your desk, right? Wait for 2 hours looking around. No, you're going to go to the backstage. You're going to, greet and meet people and maybe take a selfie or two if you want, those kind of things. And by the time that the 2 hours are gone, boom, you already spoke with everybody. You broke the ice with everybody. Everybody knows that you're the guy to speak with after the fight, or at least one of the guys to speak with after the fight.
Yeah.
And I'll give you this example. At Cage Legacy and the IUR Fighting Championship, those were the two events where the fighters, after the backstage, they would come and get me from cage side and like, oh, can we get the interview done? I'm like, yeah, cool, let's go. And I go.
Because they know who you are. They remember, yeah.
Yeah. And those were the events where I had David doing camera work for me. So David, like, okay, I can now leave the cage without being worried that I'm losing cage side footage, you know, because I have somebody else there for me. So away I go and do the interviews and come back and you know, keep doing the work until the next fight's over. Where you were afraid of missing the main event and this and that. And I was like, screw the main event, just go get Noah, because that's the guy that we've been covering. And then if you can, then get the main event. But like, we're not here for the main event guy. We're here for the co-main event, which was Noah having his pro debut. And the fight before that, which was Abano Fares as well. So because those two fights were next to each other, the risk was too great of you going, doing a 5-minute interview, and you're losing the finish, which happened in like 1 minute and 30 seconds. Like, we don't want that, okay?
Yeah.
But if it was like, okay, fight's over, you are already in the backstage, you're waiting for Abanos to come to the back, you're already there. Abanos, give us quick thoughts on your fight, blah, 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 blah. What do you think of the decision? Because I think the decision was like 2 and 3, right? Two rounds for Fares, 3 rounds for Monza. That's how I scored at least the fight. Yeah, and I kind of lost the stream when they were reading the decision. I just got it back whenever he was raising his hands. So I didn't hear if it was a split decision or unanimous decision. Did you get any of that while you were there? Do you remember what it was?
It was so loud and noisy that where I sat, I have to admit, at certain times, because there's a pillar in front of me in the other corner of the cage, I had to jump from my seat to go around just to make sure that I could get the footage properly with the two guys actually going at fighting.
Yeah.
Because sometimes the referee would be walking past them and stuff. There is something else moving away. You gotta
remember the audio is for the stream that they are recording. Yeah, go ahead.
The audio what?
No, I was saying the audio is for the stream, like the audio that they are recording, the microphone, the ring announcer reading the decision. Yeah. All that is not for the people in attendance. That's all for the stream at home, really.
Right.
If that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, the people might hear it, and I don't know if the mics were connected to the sound system on there, but there are some events where it's not even connected to anything. It's just the guys are reading that on the microphone, and it's just going. The audio is going to the stream.
Okay.
No, like inside the venue, even like.
But the people inside the venue won't be hearing that. What we said, what they'll be announced, will be going to the stream.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like,
if they can hear his human voice as far as he can reach, and that's all the reach that he gets, it's not being transmitted to like a sound system where everybody can then hear, like a stadium or something. Mm-hmm. Like if you go to a football game, you don't hear the commentators doing any commentating, right? You just watch the game and that's it, and you hear the crowds talking. It's the same concept. Where you were, you cannot hear what the commentators are saying, right?
That's true. Yeah.
You cannot hear what the judges are talking. None of that. It's just fucking crowd work. You can hear the fighter fighting. Fight's over. The fight. If you're like cage side, you can hear it.
The fighters, mate, it will definitely hear the commentary.
What did you think of the sound of the punches landing, kicks landing? It's very different from being at home, right?
It's the raw sound itself of flesh on flesh.
Violent. It's so violent.
Yes, nothing compares.
Surprised.
nothing compares to being cage side as a fight or any sort of sporting event. Nothing compares, because there's lots of things that in the broadcast that they're gonna hide from you because of other payment, or
Yes.
they think they're just too nasty to be shown, nasty or too gruesome to be shown on TV. You know, there's too many
Yeah.
snowflakes these days. So when you're there, cage side or whichever sporting event, you see everything. You see everything. Nothing's
Yeah.
hidden from you at all. Okay,
Yeah.
I want to move on to something else. Not just the upcoming UFC fight, but there was was there a heated interview that you recently had? Because I saw in your stories.
Yes.
What happened?
Okay. That is the first guy in all the 300 episodes that came on my podcast and had a beef with me. I'll tell you exactly what happened. Blessed Weddy trains at SPG Ireland, same gym that Conor McGregor trains. He fought for the title at Clan Wars, featherweight amateur title, against Lewis Byrne, very top prospect as well. Fought on the IMAFs, got silver medal, like proper guy, right, from Team Rhino, which is under Coach Andy Ryan. Whoever knows him, they know he's a really top coach, as well as John Kavanagh. Anyway, the fight goes to a split decision, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, split decision. And I said, from where I am, from my angle of the cage, I think it's 2 rounds to Lewis, 1 round to Eddie. They read the decision as 2 rounds to Eddie, 1 round to Lewis. It's a split decision, so that means that one of the judges had it scored exactly like I did, which was 2 rounds to Lewis, 1 round to Eddie. And I happened to be sitting right next to the judge, to one of the tables of the judges. So there's 3 tables around the cage. For those who don't know, you have the red corner, blue corner, and then you have like a table here, a table there, and a table. Okay, you can see it, right? If this is the cage, I guess you have blue, red, and then you have like a table here, a table here, and a table here, and then you have like the commentator somewhere around there.
Okay.
So I was like right next to the judges, and I was with William, which is one of the photographers of Clan Wars, right? So me and him were sharing the same table. And I remember asking William, what do you think? And he's like, oh, I think 2-1 for Lewis. Okay, so he thinks the same as I am. And I'm guessing the judge that scored 2-1 is the judge next to me, right? Because they're seeing the same thing that I'm seeing from my angle, right? So to me, it makes sense that would be the one judge that scored 2 rounds to Lewis versus 2 rounds to Eddie. But let's not forget, we have the other 2 judges on the other sides of the cage. And that's why in MMA we have 3 judges. So I went on the podcast after the event, and I said, oh, I had that score 2-1 for Lewis. And he saw that podcast, right? So then he does live on Instagram, and I show up on the podcast, just like watching his live, right? Because he was talking about his win and this and that. And he starts talking shit to me on his live, saying, I don't know, how did you score this 2-1 to Lewis? You must be dreaming or this and that, blah, blah, blah. You don't know what you're talking about, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, dude, it was literally a split decision. And he says on his live, there was no split decision. There was no split decision. This was unanimous decision. I won that fight clearly, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, fuck, did I get this wrong? Is there any chance that I'm remembering this wrong? Like, I'm pretty sure it was a split decision. Anyway, the guys from the Energized shows, absolute dicks, agreeing with him and saying, oh, yes, you're wrong. And this
Hold on. The Energized show.
Yeah, the guys were also on the chat, and they were being like absolute dicks, saying that I don't
Really?
know what I'm talking about and this and that shit,
Okay.
right? And I get off the chat, and and I leave saying, you're more than welcome to come on my podcast and we can debate this and we can talk about it. So I left it, polite. I didn't say any shit, didn't talk shit, nothing like that. First thing I do, internet, topology, Blessed Sweaty, MMA record, comes up with his record. Split decision. I take a screenshot, send them over, and I'm like, what the fuck are you on about? It says split decision. Like, you literally made me think that I had my memory wrong or something like that, which is called like gaslighting, I think, when people make you think that you're wrong or whatever happened didn't happen, something like that. So he then said something like, oh, I was joking or this and that, whatever. And then he tried to get on the podcast a few times, but he's the kind of guy where he's like, he messages me and he's like, I can do a podcast right now. I'm like, what the fuck, dude? It's like 2:00 in the afternoon. I'm getting my kids. No, that's not how it works. Evenings or mornings. Then he messages me like 3 days later. Oh, I can do it right now. And it's like 10:00 in the morning and I'm about to leave to go somewhere, like, I'm like, no, it doesn't work that way. You got to book a slot and you got to let me know in advance and we got to sit down and this and that. And then on that night, he literally messages me. It's like 8:00 and he's like, I can go live right now. And I'm like, let me check. 8:00. Kids are in beds. I don't have a podcast tonight. And I tell him, give me 10 minutes. I get my shit ready, tell my wife, I got a podcast going, blah, 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 sit down. And I thought that was over, like that was squashed. So I didn't even think we were going to talk about it. I thought we were just going to talk about, his future fight, because he's supposed to fight at Clan Wars, March 13th. So that's what I was thinking about. Like, that's what we're going to cover, right? So he gets on the podcast and he starts talking shit about how what am I doing or why am I saying this, split decision, blah, blah, blah. How can I see it for Lewis and this and that? And that's the first time that I've ever had that happening on the podcast. So just to emphasize that can be the type of fighter that will be a dick to you as media. Like 1 out of 300. Okay, so that's not a bad stat to me.
Okay, hold on.
I'm not going to stop doing my work because of that.
No,
I'm not going to be afraid because of that.
That's good. That's good. You shouldn't stop. You shouldn't let that put you off. But you also said that the two guys, the Energized boys, Energized lads, who are, from what I've been told, they are an established podcast in Ireland now.
It's one of them, Roscoe. Roscoe. That's the guy that's always a dick, to be honest.
Okay, all right. Yeah. But I mean, Ireland, they do support their own. That's good. But I mean, if you're saying that against them, that they're like that, and they're now even in the US, I think they've now got a deal with the UFC to be.
They do, yes. Congratulations to them. Honestly, like,
that was good. But then when I saw that, I was thinking, with the UFC, if it was another promotion like Bellator or PFL, maybe I'll be a lot happier for you, because the UFC, if they see that you're doing something they really do not like, if Dana White sees that you're doing something that pisses his fighters or even him off, they can take away that deal within a moment's notice. They're very, very strict and almost very biased
but this happened before that deal came about.
Way before the deal.
That deal came about.
No, I'm just saying that's good for them. What I'm saying is that if you're saying that against the Energized lads, have you received any back? I mean, you're saying this now, but I mean, have you received any backlash from other people within the combat sports and community? Any other fight fans have said, how can you disrespect? I mean, anyone who's...
No, it's always the same guy. It's always Roscoe out of the Energized show. He's the only guy that gave me shit since the beginning, really.
Really?
Yeah. Like, right. I'm going to say this. Right. Yeah. So what happened was, the first time that he reached out to me was to say something like, oh, it's really cool what you're doing, podcast, blah, blah, blah. Okay, cool. Thank you. Gave them a follow. I didn't even know about the show. Never even heard about them. This was before they went on the podcast with Big John McCarthy, because that was the podcast.
The Weighing In podcast, yeah.
Yes, that was the episode that made them go up in followers. before that episode, they had, I think, like 8,000 followers. And then after that episode, they went to over 12,000 followers.
On Instagram or YouTube? Oh, you follow us? You mean must be on Instagram?
On Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah, on Instagram. Yeah.
Sure.
I don't know how many downloads they get or anything like that, because I don't check that. But anyway, yeah. So they went on that podcast and then they got big. I shared the meme of Vanderlei Silva and Chris Cyborg, and saying like virtual identical, and I thought that was like fucking funny, because like, yes, one is a woman, one is a guy, and you look at their faces and they do look quite similar, in my opinion, and I thought that was fucking funny. You probably seen the memes of Mike Goldberg, because he used to always say virtual identical in the UFC when he was referring to their reach or their height or that kind of stuff. He would say it's virtually identical. So those two photos, and then Mike Goldberg saying in the bottom, virtual identical. And I thought that was hilarious. I shared that. And the guy replies to me saying something like, oh, how dare you sharing that and this and that? You should be supporting the fighters. You say you support this and that, and you have girls. How would you feel if somebody's doing this to your girl and did this? And I'm like, dude, it's a fucking meme. Like, it's comedy. It's funny. So that was the first time he gave me shit. And then the next time was about Nuari and the 6-second head kick KO. There was a lot of controversy about that at Cage Legacy. And he was saying that he was for sure the KO, blah, blah, blah. I was saying, I don't think he was. I think he should be the disqualification, blah, blah, blah. And we were arguing about this. And yeah, he ended up being that he was right. So I leave my ego to the side and I say in the comments, you're right. Okay, cool. Guess I'm wrong. Something like that. And then on the messages, he still comes on and he still says stuff like, oh, like you shouldn't say stuff like that. You are one, can't remember what was the expression, but anyway, he said something. And I'm like, dude, what else do you want? I already said I was wrong. I already said you're right. Like, what else do you want? So that was the second instance. And then the third instance was at that live with Bless Weddy. So yeah, it is what it is. Doesn't matter. It's not gonna
what was the name of the guy
stop me from doing what I'm doing or anything. If anything, yeah, let me just say this. If anything, what they are doing is actually going to open doors for what I'm doing. So like, if they can get a deal for the UFC for podcasting, awesome. Like, awesome. He's from Ireland. Awesome. I can be the guy that covers the prospect amateurs that Dana White can come and see. Who is he going to hire next? Who's the next talent coming up? I can be that guy. So, okay, awesome. Like, I'm happy for them. I hope they are very successful, because as one podcast, you can never cover everything that's going on in the sport. I don't care how good you are. You can never do it. I can't do it. So I know that if they have one part of the niche of the podcast industry, there's many other slices of the pie to be taken by other people. So
not just that, but I can see with this, because a lot of this now, the podcast is unfortunately it is heavily based on your social media followers on Instagram, your likes, and also your subscribers on YouTube, and all of that, as well as going up, it can also go down. So you can have the good days and have the bad days as well. So I was surprised, because I since doing the first ever episode with you and David, I never ever really thought that you never really came across that as that guy that would get into heated disputes or feuds. So when I saw it in your story, I thought, wow, maybe it's just a joke. But now that I've asked you about it, it did happen.
Yeah, it did happen. Yeah, and like, you can go and watch the interview. Like, I would invite you to go watch the interview.
And what's the guy's name? Just remind me, please.
Blessed Weddy. It's his Instagram description or tag. Blessed Weddy.
Yeah, I see
and
that.
it's episode 312
A
or
leading
11, something like that.
a leading
So it's one of my
Eritrean
most
combat
recent
athlete.
episodes. Say again?
Like a leading Eritrean combat athlete. No, I'm not laughing.
Can you zoom that, or can you make that, get that closer to the camera?
Can you see it?
Yeah, I think that's him. Yeah, that's him for sure. Yeah, that's the guy. So like, watch that episode. I got lots of feedback from that episode from a lot of people saying, "Oh, why did you let him speak to you like that on the podcast? And why would you have him on and this and that?" And I'm like, I'm not going to run away from an argument. I'm not going to, back down. Like, I'm not afraid to debate anybody. I'll debate anybody anywhere about anything. And I'm that guy that, okay, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, and I'll put my hands up and I'll say, okay, fucked up, I'm wrong, whatever, fine, let's move on. And with that one, he was trying to just rush me and say like 5 or 6 points in a row, and I'm like, dude, stop, you got to let me speak and address each one of them. So step number 1, you said this, okay, that's my response to that. Step number 2, you said this, that's my response to that, blah 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 blah. And I addressed every single point of it, and he was left with, okay, let's just move on then and ask me the questions you gotta ask me. And I'm like, okay, let's talk about your next fight then. So he didn't really have to come back because facts are facts at the end of the day. It was a split decision. There was a judge that saw it the other way. I saw it the other way. That's it. End of. But yeah, I invite anybody to watch that and give me feedback on that one if you
I
guys
think
want.
from based on how he wanted to organize the whole thing, it almost seems like every time we'll tell you, look, I'm free right now. The first time he told him, sorry, you have to book a slot. I'm free right now. It does it a second time. I'm free right. Does it? I think 3 or 4 times he does that. I think he wants to be in control of the entire situation. Now, when
Yes.
he says jump, you ask him how high, that sort of thing, because you actually have to plan it first so you can both have a proper dialogue, have a proper conversation, proper argument about it. But I can see
like,
probably
I am so lucky that I can literally start a conversation out of nowhere and talk about anything without any notes, without any research, without having to write down anything. I am lucky to be that guy because he messages me, gives me 10 minutes notice. I don't have time to do anything. I don't have time to watch his fight. I don't have time to look at anything other than his record, just so I could say you won the fight by split decision, you're now 5-1 or whatever, that kind of stuff. I don't have time for anything. And then I wasn't ready for him to call me out on stuff. So I was lucky in that sense to be able to, okay, hold on, let's address this point, and just leave him at the end with nothing else to say but talk about the next fight. And then we talked about the next fight, and we left that at the end with, next time it will be a much happier episode or something like that. Like, next time there will be no heated debates or anything like that. So it's okay. We squashed it this time, and we're able to move on. And again, I'm not that guy that I'm going to say, oh, I'm never going to have him on my podcast again. Like, it's all good. I don't mind. Like, yeah, I'll invite him again. No problem.
What about the Energized boys? Sorry, not guys. The Energized lads. Are you still gonna are you on good terms with both of them, or at least one of them, to go on that disrespect?
No, so it seems to be that one of them is in charge of the Instagram page, because it's always the same guy replying to messages on Instagram.
Yeah, I do see that. Yeah.
Right. So that seems to be Roscoe. Roscoe is going to be at the Cage Legacy, and it seems like they are going to do tag team and commentary. So they were actually invited to start doing commentary cage side for that show, Cage Legacy. So again, they are opening doors for guys like me and you to do stuff like that in the future. If a guy they started the podcast 6 years ago, right? 6 years ago.
Yeah.
6 years in, they got a UFC deal. So if I'm here at 6 years, or sorry, if I'm here 1 year in already, I can only imagine where I'm going to be in 6 years' time. And I'm pretty sure, like, you look at the numbers. They have like 12,000 followers.
13,000.
13, whatever. They had 8,000 before that episode with John McCarthy, which wasn't that long ago. I'm at nearly 4,000 already. So if you keep that up, 3 years in, I'll have the same 12,000. You know, if I get 4,000 a year every year, then yeah, I'll get that easy. So and like the cage side commentary. Again, it's another gig that can come about. I want to train to become a judge in MMA. I want to train to become a referee in MMA. So there's many doors opening, you know, like this can literally go like several different ways. And yeah, anyway, yeah. What was the question?
No,
Do I have
no,
any beef? No, I don't have
no.
any beef with that. Yeah,
No,
I don't have any.
no, that's been cleared up. And because when I saw it for the first time, I was thinking, wow, this must be a joke. But okay, UFC 271, the main
Yes.
event, and really it's the only one that's interested me so far at the time we were making this podcast, Whittaker versus Adesanya. I'm going to say it now. I believe it may be a close fight, but if I had to be a betting person, I'd say hands down, Israel Adesanya is going to win the fight. His striking is, yeah,
100%.
yeah. But I'd really just don't
We are of the
understand
same opinion on that one.
why,
Same opinion.
why has he painted his toenails? And it's not just his toenails, he painted his toenails black. He also did something with his fingernails. I don't know what's going on.
Here's a real question.
Yeah.
Who gives a fuck? Sorry, dude. Who gives a fuck?
You're right. You're
Like,
right. As long as he wins,
He could have a dead nail or something that looks disgusting. I don't know if you've ever seen one.
I have.
When the nail starts to die off and rotten. Yeah, those are disgusting. I would rather paint my nails black as well if I had one of those. So, you know, but the real question is, who gives a fuck? Like, I see this kind of shit going on, and I'm like, I don't understand why people are making content out of this stuff, and I really don't. So maybe you can shed some light on me and tell me why, because I really don't get it.
I think maybe it's just hype. They want something to talk about, something to make noise about, something to make content about.
Imagine that the dude's gay. Imagine that he comes out and says he's gay.
Yeah, doubtful.
And what? No. Like, he was humping Paulo Costa in the ass. Not doubtful. That was just. He has a girlfriend. I know that. But imagine that he comes out as bi, or he comes out as those guys that like to cross dress as a woman, or he likes to be pegged by his girlfriend. Who gives a shit? Like, that's his personal life. Who gives a shit? All I want to know as a fan, is he going to win? Is he going to lose? Is he going to knock him out? Is he going to submit him? It's like the odds must be like astronomically tiny of being a submission win. Is he going to go to decision this time? That's all I care as an MMA fan. Like, whatever the fuck they do outside the cage, I don't give a shit, because in the same way, people shouldn't know what I do on my personal life.
Yeah, but the reality is, maybe in Ireland it's a bit different, but here in the UK, we want everyone who's in a public. And to be honest, these days with social media and with the internet, with the internet, let alone social media.
Oh, I know.
Everyone's a public figure.
Love Island and all that shit, you know, like, and like, she makes me watch it with her, you know. So like, I've watched all the Love Islands with her, and she likes to watch the Coronation Streets and all this shit. So trust me, I am well versed on it. I just personally, as an MMA fan, I don't fucking get it. Like the Jake Paul's bullshit, and like, who gives a shit? Is he an MMA fighter? No. Okay, that's off my radar then.
Okay.
Are toenails to do with MMA fighting? Is he going to help him win? No. Okay, that's off my radar. Like, I have too many things to think about, and toenails is not one of them.
The issue of yes. Speaking of which, you mentioned Paulo Costa, but in that fight, people were questioning, well, is his pectorials, his nipples look somewhat awkward, and they're saying that
he's on steroids. And
you think he's on steroids?
100%. Yeah. No doubt.
See, someone mentioned that to me in the last time that I talked about this, and excuse me,
And I can go really in depth on that one with you because I am very well educated in steroids. So if you want to dive into that, we can dive into that another episode.
Yes, yes, another episode.
I have 10% or less battery on my phone right now, so yeah. But
people are saying
if I had to bet, black or red, black being steroids, red not steroids, I would bet the house on steroids because that's gynecomastia from coming off a cycle and not doing the PCT correctly. So yeah.
Well, okay, all right. We'll save that. We'll save that for after.
You're talking to a guy that knows about steroids. Like I've tried them. I've done. Yeah. I've done all my research.
Yes, because you used to be a bodybuilder, isn't it? Well, when you were actually doing it. Yes.
So
okay.
I know those things. Like, and I was super scared about trying the first time. So I did my research for about 2.5 years before I tried anything. And I mean, like 2.5 years of going to work Monday to Friday, working for Santander, which is where I was working at the time. And we were allowed to go on the internet. And I would just read like article after article after article after article, reviews from this, reviews from that. What happened to this guy? What happened to that guy? And like just 2 years of whatever free time I would get at work, I would be researching steroids. What can happen, what cannot happen, how to do it the right way, how not to do it, how to start, how to escalate it, how to de-escalate, like the whole thing. So yeah, like steroids in combat sports are so different than steroids in bodybuilding. And that's what people associate. And they think, oh, if he was taking, he would be Brock Lesnar. No, they're steroids that don't do shit for you in terms of muscular growth, but just increase your endurance, for example. The steroids that do that, like the EPO, you heard of the EPO, right? From TJ Dillashaw. That's a steroid that's pretty much just to increase your red blood cell. So it just makes you take more oxygen in and you get less tired. Like if you could run 10 miles and say that's your limit, you take that, you can now run 15 miles just because you took that. So now you don't get tired at 10 miles, you get tired at 15 miles and so on. So yeah, so like there's steroids for all sorts of things. There's steroids for healing, which Anderson Silva was caught with because he broke his leg, right? He broke his leg against Chris Weidman. And then he took steroids to help the bone grow faster and heal stronger.
Yeah.
So there's steroids for that. There's steroids that make your tendons thicker, which Yoel Romero went to the doctor and they said he had his tendons of his eyes 3 times bigger than a normal human. Yes, that's because he fucking took steroids that make his tendons way stronger and way bigger than a normal person, but it doesn't make him a bodybuilder. Well, I don't know what other shit he took, but the guy looks like a fucking steroid house.
we need to wrap. We need to wrap. Jesus Christ.
I know. Like
in the eyes, in the optics. Right,
because he broke one of his eye sockets, and then the eye doctor was checking, and he's like, he called Dana White, and like Dana White said this on some interview, and he's like, where the fuck did you get this guy? And he's like, yeah, he's a freak of nature, right? He's like, no, you don't understand. His tendons are like 3 times larger than the normal human being. And it's like, yeah, he's from like fucking Cuba, running all these sorts of programs. And if you guys go and watch a Yoel Romero episode with Joe Rogan, he goes into like, it's a 3-hour conversation between them, and he goes through the whole development as a child, wrestling and all that, until he went on the Olympics and scored whatever, bronze or silver or gold, whatever he got. But yeah, anyway, you Manuel, can talk steroids with me anytime.
We need to Jesus Christ. Guys, thank you so much for watching. If you watched to this extent, if you listened to this extent, thank you so much. I'll put if you're watching YouTube, I'll put the link description for Emmanuel's podcast, Prospects MMA. You can find it on YouTube and on Instagram. I put the link to my podcast Instagram page, Ike MMA. You can find on Instagram. And you can listen to the podcast on Spotify, Google Podcast, and on iTunes as well. So I think, yeah, thanks again, guys. And please
Can
don't
I
forget.
ask you?
Yeah.
Can you upload this on my podcast channel as well?
I can send it across to you, yeah. But I mean, I can send it across to you as a file when everything's prepared with the thumbnail and introductions, everything's fully prepared. And yeah, I'll send across to you, then you can upload it.
Just the audio version, because that's the only thing that
yeah,
I'm not really doing consistently as a podcaster. I'm not uploading on all the podcast platforms, and I think this is like a really good conversation where I'm not actually talking to a fighter. I'm just talking to another fellow MMA fan about fighting, and I think it's another side of me that people don't see when I'm talking to fighters all the time. So yeah, this would be
I can find out how that can be done. I'm sure there must be one way of doing it. It might be a long process because it's lots of data sending across, but I'll find out how
I'll just give you my logins. You can log in on your side and upload it that way. Probably easier. Save sending stuff.
Do you have a SoundCloud account, or do you have a hosting platform account such as SoundCloud or Podbean?
Anchor FM.
Okay,
Anchor FM account. Yeah.
Oh, from Spotify.
No, I just log into Anchor. I would upload the episode, and that would then go everywhere, Spotify's and iTunes and all that.
Well, I think Anchor's from Spotify, isn't it?
Oh, it might be. It might be. I wouldn't know. Probably is. Yeah. I just know that I would, like, I tried this the first few times. I would go live and then put the Anchor to record the audio as I was going live, and that would record the conversation, and then I would upload the conversation that way. But the audio was atrocious, so I kind of stopped doing that, and I just stick to the Instagram. So yeah.
I'll have a look at the audio for you. It might be too loud, the volume might be too, the gain and the volume might be too low, but I'll see what I can do. See what I can do.
Yeah, cool.
All right,
cool,
guys.
Man. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Done.
Yeah, thank you. Good stuff, man. Good stuff.
All right.
Thank you very much.
I'll catch up with you later. Yep.